7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Welcome to Innovating a Game Changer podcast. This is episode 23, and today we're continuing our journey with Google Ventures Design Sprint. In particular, we're looking at Friday, and this is the day where you get the feedback that we've been looking for. We've been working towards this, and the feedback is so important. I'm your innovator, and you're listening to Innovating a Game Changer podcast. Okay, welcome to Innovating a Game Changer podcast. This is episode 22. We are going to look specifically today at the things that you need to do from a Friday perspective. And this is where you're going to have brought the customers into the room and you're going to be doing an interview. And I'm going to walk you through that process and give you some hints and tips about how to make that so smooth and make sure that it goes off without a hitch. And most importantly, that you get that feedback that you've been looking for. So again, all this information can be found at googleventures.com, which is gv.com and /sprint. So if you're looking for this information, and of course the sprint book too is the way to get your hands on this information to actually extract this and run your own workshops that will take an idea all the way through to prototype and customer feedback in just 5 days. So on Thursday, we actually spent most of our day going through the exercises to build out the prototype itself. We talked about the tools that could be utilized to do that. We talked about the type of people that are typically in those rooms. One of the things I didn't mention yesterday on the Thursday session was that you could actually do paper prototypes as well. Now, they've got limited capabilities and limited appeal to actually going into one of these Fridays where you're doing these interviews. So if you do have the ability to use online tools to go ahead and do these prototypes, it's much better to do this. So the basic breakdown is this. You have two rooms. In one room, you put a camera feed, much like what I'm using here for this podcast, and you put it in the room. You make sure the room's nice and clean and it's well lit and it's inviting for the guests. The webcam must be able to see the face of the person that you're doing the interview with, and typically, in my particular cases, I'm normally using a smartphone, so an iPod or an iPad or an Android phone. So we want to make sure the camera angle is correct. That's going to pick up that particular facial expression as they're going through it. I also like to have another camera that's positioned in such a way that it's getting a top-down view of the actual device that they're utilizing. I've typically got a space on the table I use the blue painter's tape. I put that out there, and I ask the user to keep their hands in that general area as they're working with the device itself. And again, that's going to be in a very natural position for using the phone itself. So if I was to be doing that particular one here, I would be having the phone basically at waist level in my hand, and unfortunately you can't see that on the screen, but right at the edge of the table in face level, and have that second camera so that it's going to pick up all the interactions that user actually has or is doing with that particular device as they're going through. So you stream that video, and you can use any of the video services. Google Hangouts is a good one. Skype's another good one as well. If you've got the two camera angles, I'd much rather use the free software from Google Hangouts. I can pipe those through two different computers into the Google Hangouts. You want to make sure that that's one-way video feed, so it's coming from the video, the interview room only, and you're making sure that the sound quality is picked up really, really good. Now, I typically use these same mics that I'm using right now for the podcast to do those in. These are actually boom mics, and they work really, really well. This is a Rode mic. It's about $149. It's well worth the investment. It's got flip switches inside of it, so you can actually pick up more of the surrounding sound inside of the room. You set that at 0 decibels and you're good to go. You can run it through a preamp or straight into the back of the computer. Typically, if it's facing the individual, you have one facing the individual, one facing the interviewer. Two of those microphones will pick up the room quite nicely to get everything that's going on. So Google Ventures says 5 is the magic number. You want to be doing 5 interviews, and you want to do them all back to back within that one day. I always have 5 or 6, and just in case we end up having somebody drop out and our backup can't get in for whatever reason, I'd much rather do an extra interview to make sure that we're covered for those 5 days. Typically, they come up with that magic number of 5 as well, because 5 is a good sample size of the target demographic that you were after for the particular idea you were going through. And again, on day 1, you've decided which idea you're actually going to explore, and then that's when you're going to go after the customer demographic that you're trying to utilize, either going through Craigslist or posting it on Facebook to get people in, Snapchat or what have you, to get those people in. And again, you're going to be giving them a gift card for their time that they're spending with you. In the other room, all of the people are set up around a big TV that's got the computer plugged into it, that's got the feed coming in from the Google Hangouts, so you can see the 2 angles. Everybody's also got a bunch of Postit Notes and the Sharpies so that they can actually write what they're saying. So they're watching it and they're learning together. They're making sure they're getting that feedback. And again, all of the team members should be in that other room, because some people are going to be able to catch certain facial expressions that not everybody may be able to be catching. Some people are going to be seeing the interaction with the device, if it is a device that you're putting out there, or a prototype for a device that you're putting out there. So you want to make sure that you're capturing that. And so as they're going through the particular interview, each person's writing down their observation on the Postit Notes. And at the end of that, they put them up on a whiteboard or a big sheet of paper, and they talk about them really quickly, say what they saw. Now, it's important to know here that not every idea that you put forward is going to be a winner, right? So we've only spent 4 days at this point. We've gone into the 5th day here. We've spent a very, very short period of time. But what we're going to know coming out of the back of this is if this idea is actually something that those individual customers are actually going to be wanting to use. But most importantly, you're going to get the feedback that's going to allow you to change that prototype and maybe run through another design sprint right after this. If there's a lot of interest and there's feature sets that you would asking for and they're giving you feedback for them, it's really important to not just toss the idea away. If there's interest at all with the 5 people that you're interviewing or the 6 people that you're interviewing, you want to make sure that that feedback's going back into your next round of your prototype. You also want to be taking those notes down for future prototypes that you'll be putting together in future design sprints, and you want to be using that as a body of knowledge as you go through. I typically, leading up to the next design sprint, go through the success stories and the failures of the past, as well as some of the positive and the negative feedbacks, and that helps you craft a particular solution in your future design sprints based on that body of knowledge that you've got, so you're able to use that information over and over again. So the 5-act interview is pretty much exactly what I followed during this particular process. Of course, I welcome them into the room. Typically, I am the person that's doing this. I have been the person that's leading them through this particular design sprint as a facilitator, so I typically do that. I also work with another young lady who welcomes them into the foyer, where they're asked if they want something to eat or drink, and we provide snacks and beverages there. And that helps them friendly welcome, just because they may be coming in a little bit earlier for their interview. And of course, we set these people up back to back, so there's going to be some overlap. So typically, while I'm in the room doing the interview with the individual, I've got a young lady that's introducing the company to the individuals that are coming up, and make sure that they feel comfortable with the surroundings. So the questions, you really want to start with a context question. So starting small and then transition to the questions about the topic that you're trying to learn about, which is really about your prototype itself. You want to do tasks and nudges as well. You want to watch out for the customer to figure out the prototype on their own. So you do not want to explain the prototype in any sort of detail. Give them a high-level overview about what the product is, but that's it. Allow them to interact with the product, because that's what we're trying to get, right? We're trying to get the feedback from the customer and the way that they're interacting with it. Are they clicking on something on the screen that you wouldn't expect them to do? Are they trying to scroll up or scroll down? Are they swiping left or right? Are they using gestures that you might not have thought about? These are all important things to look out for and take notes on as well. So at the end of it, also, you want to ask follow-up questions, of course. So you want to ask the customer as they're going through this, what are they seeing? What are they feeling? What's going on? Who, what, where, why, when, how questions. Open-ended questions are really, really good as well. And then, so if you want to take a look at some of the interview tips that they put forward here, of course, it's good to be a good host. We talked about that at the start. You want to make yourself friendly. You want open arms. You don't want to be sitting there with cross. You don't want to be leaning back. You want to be interacting with that individual. Make yourself very friendly. Make sure you're smiling and be in a good mood while you're doing it as well. We talked about this really quickly, which is ask the who, the what, the where, the when, the how, the why questions. Do not ask any questions with yes or no or multiple choice answers, because they're typically going to lead the interview in a specific direction, which is going to lessen the ability or lessen the feedback that you're going to get from this individual. So yes, no questions, you should not be asking those. Just open the questions up. And then as they start to talk about those things, ask, that's interesting, tell me more, or tell me why you think like that, or tell me how that made you feel. Right, those types of questions are really good to get to the root causes of what it is that they're interacting with. If they're lost or confused about what's going on as far as with the application goes, try not to, again, lead them as well, but ask them what they're thinking now. Yeah, okay, I'm lost. I don't understand what this is doing. Ask them why. Ask them what would be a better way to deal with that. What would be a better presentation methodology to interact with the particular thing. And you want to also give a lot of silence. So you want to be able to ask those questions and then just have a nice, long, silent pause. That'll typically get a person talking. And because we've already introduced them and interacted with them at the start, they're typically open as well. A curiosity mindset is very important as well. So you want to be authentic and fascinated by your customers' reactions and thoughts. Again, digging deeper into those and making sure that you're getting the feedback that you need to have. Now, it's good to, as you're going through the previous week, you've been building up these interview questions. You've been building up the things that you wanted to ask the individual. You've been also, where you think back to the designs that were going on during the particular week, ask those questions where you guys had a difficult time in picking a direction, and see, rather than lead the individual with those questions, ask, would there have been a better way that they could have interacted with the particular tool set that you've put in front of them. So before the first interview, as part of setting up the room, you've got on a whiteboard, you've created a column for each one of the customers, and you've added a row for each prototype or section of the prototype on there as well. And again, you're taking notes during these. I use the sticky notes and the markers. They suggest to do the same. You want to make sure that direct quotes are being taken care of. One of the things I didn't mention also, these particular interviews should be being recorded as well. Google Hangouts, you can actually run some software that'll record that as you're going through. Make sure you've got that as well in case you need to go back, something was missed, maybe the sound wasn't where it needed to be, or what have you. Also, devices in the interview room are not allowed. However, it is important for the particular interviewer to have a phone available just in case something's going wrong with the technology between the two rooms. Rather than interrupt the session itself, send a quick text message and then address the particular situation and move on. So we talked about taking those notes and making sure that they're being stuck up. Again, you want to be talking about those interviews, briefly discussing them. Do not draw conclusions at this point. Make sure, though, you share your thoughts with the rest of the team members, and that's going to also trigger some additional notes that are going to go up after that. In between each of the particular sessions, you also want to take a break. You want to make sure that you're getting refreshed between each one of these sessions. And then that gives you some time to also, from the facilitator's perspective, from an interviewer's perspective, that gives you the ability to meet the individual outside of the room that you're taking them into, so they kind of feel a little bit more comfortable as they're going through. So at the end of the day, that's when you digest everything that's been going on. You're now starting to group the things that are going on and the feedback that you are getting into a set of themes, and you create the themes around those patterns that start to emerge. You want to list all those out. You want to group those things back. You want to put them into categories of positive, negative, or neutral. And then from the feedback as well, you're going to get some additional ideas about how you could improve the product. Sometimes they're a winner. Sometimes the people don't use it or would never use it, and that's a good indication that you're not on the right track. And again, I think that's a highly successful rundown itself. So if you come into a session like this after spending 5 days and you find out that this particular product is not needed or not wanted by the customer group, then you can just go ahead and stop that particular one and go on to another idea. You haven't invested too much of it in 5 days, and you've got that feedback that you're looking for that's going to help you improve on sessions in the future. As far as the wrap-up goes, you're either going to make a decision to continue with this particular thing and kick it off into an IT kickoff session. I have a workshop that digs a little bit deeper about the prototype and what it should look like and gets everybody on the same page. That happens in 1 day. Excuse me. And then that'll kick it off, or you're going to shelve that particular idea, or you're going to take it back into a secondary sprint, secondary design sprint to improve the idea. Maybe you're onto something, you just weren't quite there, and of course that feedback's going to allow you to do that with a lot of success. So that's it for the Google Ventures Design Sprint. Again, all of this information can be found on gv.com. And you can take a look at that, gv.com/sprint. Again, the book is available. The book is called Sprint, Solve Big Problems and Test New Ideas in Just 5 Days. It's a great book. It's a great way to get started with innovation in your company, to invest these 5 days and see how it works out for you. So this has been episode 23 of the Innovating a Game Changer podcast. This was Friday, and I'm your innovator, Nevada Smith. And if you've got any ideas about future podcasts that you want to get into, whether that's Scaled Agile Framework, whether that's innovation perspective, whether that's IT management or IT team or culture change, those are all topics that I'd like to explore with you. But I want to hear what you think. So go ahead and put some information down below. And I've enjoyed bringing this stuff to you, and we'll see you next time on the next podcast. I'm your innovator. This is Nevada Smith.